August 23, 1514. The plateau near Chapdar Dawn breaks over the highlands of northwestern Iran. The air is cold, thin, still. Across a wide plain, two armies stand facing one another in silence. To the west stands the army of Selim I, ruler of the rapidly expanding Ottoman Empire. His soldiers stand in ordered ranks behind lines of artillery and defensive wagons. At the center are the empire's elite infantry, the Janissaries, armed with matchlock firearms. Across the field gathers a very different force. Thousands of mounted warriors form beneath red banners. These are the Kizilbash, the core of the army of Shah Ismail, the first founder of the Safavid Empire. For more than a decade, Ismail's cavalry has swept across Persia, defeating rival dynasties and creating a new state. Today they face the strongest military power in the Islamic world. Neither empire can retreat. The Ottomans see the Safavids as a political and ideological threat. The Safavids see the Ottomans as rivals standing in the way of their expansion westward. The silence between the armies ends with the sound of war drums. Cavalry begins to move. Within hours, thousands of men will lie dead on this plain, and the outcome will permanently shape the political and religious map of the Middle East. This confrontation is only the beginning, because the clash between the Ottoman Empire and the Safavid Empire will grow into more than a single battle. It will become a century-long geopolitical struggle, the Ottoman-Safavid Wars, a conflict between two imperial systems, two military doctrines, and two rival visions of leadership in the Islamic world. But before cannons fired at Chaldiran, the road to war had already been shaped by decades of political transformation. At the beginning of the 16th century, the Ottoman Empire had emerged as one of the most powerful states in Eurasia. The conquest of Constantinople in 1453 ended the Byzantine Empire and transformed the Ottomans into a major imperial power controlling territory across southeastern Europe and Anatolia. Their political system was centralized. Their army was increasingly professionalized. Their use of gunpowder, weapons, especially artillery and firearms, was growing rapidly. Yet the empire's eastern frontier remained unstable. Tribal populations in eastern Anatolia often resisted Ottoman authority. Religious movements circulated across the region, sometimes challenging imperial control. In the early 16th century, a new force emerged that would intensify these tensions. In 1501, the young Safavid leader Shah Ismail I captured the city of Tabriz and declared himself Shah. This marked the creation of the Safavid Empire. Over the next several years, Ismail and his Kizilbash followers defeated rival powers across Persia. The Safavid state expanded rapidly across Iran and into parts of the Caucasus and Mesopotamia. One of Ismail's most significant political decisions was the establishment of Twelver Shi'ism as the official religion of the new Safavid state. At the time, most of the Islamic world, including the Ottoman Empire, was predominantly Sufi. This policy transformed the religious identity of Persia and contributed to the ideological rivalry between the two empires. The growing Safavid influence also affected Ottoman territories. Some communities in eastern Anatolia sympathized with Safavid religious movements. In 1511, unrest erupted in the form of the Shakulu Rebellion, a major uprising that challenged Ottoman authority. The rebellion was eventually suppressed, but it reinforced Ottoman concerns that Safavid influence could destabilize their eastern provinces. When Selim I became Sultan in 1512, he adopted a more confrontational policy toward the Safavids. Selim viewed the Safavid state not only as a geopolitical rival but also as a political threat, capable of encouraging unrest within Ottoman territory. By 1514, Selim began preparing for a major eastern campaign. The Ottoman army assembled for this campaign included tens of thousands of soldiers. It also included a significant number of artillery pieces and firearm-equipped infantry. Logistical preparation for the campaign was complex. The army had to cross long distances through difficult terrain. Supply caravans transported gunpowder, food, and equipment. Meanwhile, Safavid forces attempted to slow the Ottoman advance through raids and by destroying supplies along the route. Eventually the two armies converged near Chaldiran. The battle that followed on August 23, 1514, revealed a critical shift in the nature of warfare. Ottoman forces adopted a defensive formation centered around artillery and infantry. Cannons were placed behind barriers formed by wagons. Janissaries stood behind these defenses with firearms ready. The Safavid army relied heavily on cavalry, particularly the Kizilbash tribal warriors. Imagine two colossal empires, both at the zenith of their power, locked in a struggle that would shape the Middle East for centuries. This wasn't just a fight for land, it was a clash of ideologies, a rivalry between two of the most powerful dynasties in Islamic history, the Sunni Ottomans and the Shia Safavids. Their conflict, spanning over 200 years, was a dramatic saga of epic battles. legendary rulers, and profound consequences that echo to this day. Welcome to the story of the Ottoman-Safavid Wars. Our story begins in the early 16th century. The Ottoman Empire, based in Constantinople, was a sprawling, powerful state controlling much of Anatolia, the Balkans, and the Arab world. They were the champions of Sunni Islam, the caliphs of the Muslim world. To their east, a new power was rising in Persia, modern-day Iran. A charismatic and zealous leader, Shah Ismail I, had united the region under his Safavid dynasty and, crucially, declared Twelver Shia Islam as the state religion. This act was a direct challenge to the Ottomans. Shah Ismail not only carved out a rival empire on their border but also promoted a branch of Islam that the Ottomans viewed as heretical. For the Ottoman Sultan, Selim I, known as the Grim, this was intolerable. He saw the Safavids rise in their missionary activities in eastern Anatolia as a grave threat to his empire's stability and his own religious authority. The stage was set for a monumental confrontation. In 1514, the two armies met at the legendary Battle of Chaldiran. Sultan Selim I led a massive Ottoman force, equipped with the latest military technology of the day, cannons and janissaries armed with muskets. On the other side, Shah Ismail commanded his fearsome Kizilbash cavalry, tribal warriors who were fiercely loyal to him, believing him to be a semi-divine figure. The Kizilbash fought with incredible bravery, but their traditional tactics were no match for Ottoman firepower. The roar of the cannons and the disciplined volleys of the janissaries decimated the Safavid cavalry charge. It was a crushing defeat for Shah Ismail, while Selim couldn't hold on to the Safavid capital of Tabriz for long due to logistical issues. Chaldiran was a decisive victory. It halted the westward expansion of Safavid influence and established the Ottoman-Safavid border that, with some changes, roughly corresponds to the modern Turkey-Iran border. More importantly, it shattered Shah Ismail's aura of invincibility and deepened the sectarian divide. Following Selim's death, his son Suleiman the Magnificent ascended to the Ottoman throne. Known for his campaigns in Europe and his grand legal reforms, Suleiman also continued the fight against the Safavids. His rival was Shah Tahmasp, Ismail's son. Throughout his reign, Suleiman launched several major campaigns into Persia. His primary goal was to capture strategic territories, especially Baghdad, the former capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, which held immense symbolic importance. In 1534, Suleiman's forces successfully captured Baghdad, a huge blow to the Safavids. The Ottomans now controlled the holy Shia cities of Najaf and Karbala as well. However, the Safavids were masters of their own terrain. Shah Tahmasp adopted a scorched earth policy, retreating deep into Persia, destroying crops, and poisoning wells. This made it impossible for the massive Ottoman army to sustain itself so far from its supply bases. Suleiman would capture territory, but holding it proved to be a completely different challenge. This pattern of Ottoman invasion followed by Safavid strategic withdrawal and guerrilla warfare characterized the conflict for decades. Finally, exhausted by the constant warfare, the two empires signed the Peace of Amasya in 1555. This was the first formal treaty between the two powers. It recognized Ottoman control over Iraq, including Baghdad, and eastern Anatolia, while the Safavids kept their core territories in Persia. A fragile peace settled over the region, but the underlying rivalry was far from over. The peace lasted for about 2 decades, but the conflict reignited in the late 1570s. The Ottoman Empire, seeing internal weakness within the Safavid state, launched a new war, capturing vast territories in the Caucasus and western Iran, including the old capital Tabriz. Once again, the Safavid Empire seemed to be on the brink of collapse. But then, a new, dynamic leader rose to the throne in Persia. This was Shah Abbas the Great. Ascending to the throne in 1588, Abbas inherited a kingdom in chaos, but he was a brilliant military and administrative reformer. Recognizing the weakness of his Kizilbash tribal army, he created a new standing army loyal only to him, much like the Ottoman Janissary. He equipped his new soldiers, known as the Gulans, with modern firearms and artillery, often with the help of European advisors like the English Shirley brothers. After consolidating his power and reforming his state, Shah Abbas was ready to take back what he had lost. In the early 17th century, he launched a brilliant counteroffensive. His modernized army proved devastatingly effective. He recaptured Tabriz and systematically pushed the Ottomans out of the Caucasus and Mesopotamia. In 1623, in a moment of triumph for the Safavids, he even retook Baghdad. Shah Abbas had not only restored the Safavid Empire but had brought it to its absolute peak of power and prestige. The back-and-forth struggle for Baghdad continued. In 1638, the Ottoman Sultan Murad IV, a ruthless and determined warrior sultan, personally led a massive army to retake the city. After a brutal siege, Baghdad once again fell into Ottoman hands. This time the capture was final. The following year in 1639, the two exhausted empires signed the Treaty of Zuhab. This treaty was arguably the most significant outcome of the entire 200-year conflict. It largely reaffirmed the borders established by the Peace of Amasya over 80 years earlier, with the Ottomans keeping Iraq and the Safavids keeping the Caucasus territories like Yerevan. More importantly, the Treaty of Zuhab established a durable frontier between the two empires. This border has remained remarkably stable and forms the basis for the modern borders between Turkey, Iraq, and Iran. It was a tacit admission by both sides that neither could completely destroy the other. So, what were the long-term consequences of this epic rivalry? First and foremost, it solidified the Sunni-Shia sectarian divide in the heart of the Islamic world. The wars created a political and military frontier that became a sharp religious fault line. The Ottoman Empire became the bastion of Sunnism, while Safavid Iran became the enduring heartland of Shia Islam. Second, the constant warfare drained both empires of immense resources and manpower. The centuries of conflict arguably prevented either power from achieving its full potential. One can only wonder what might have happened if these two great empires had cooperated instead of fighting. Perhaps the Ottomans would have pushed deeper into Europe, or the Safavids could have expanded further into Central Asia. Third, the conflict indirectly led to the rise of other powers. While the Ottomans and Safavids were busy fighting each other, European maritime powers were expanding their trade networks and colonial empires, gradually shifting the global balance of power away from the great Islamic land empires. The legacy of the Ottoman-Safavid wars is complex and deeply embedded in the history of the modern Middle East. The rivalry between sultans and shahs, the clash of Janissaries and Kizilbash, and the battles for cities like Baghdad and Tabriz were not just historical events. They were defining moments that forged identities, drew borders, and entrenched divisions that continue to influence the region's politics and culture to this very day. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this journey into the past fascinating, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell for more deep dives into history. Let us know in the comments which historical rivalry you'd like to see us cover next. See you in the next video.